Hi, I'm Mouse, and I'm going to talk about Walter White, a.k.a. Heisenberg, from the series Breaking Bad, created by Vince Gilligan. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, I'll do a quick rundown of what it's about so you can get a feel for Walter White, but I'll also say that you're really missing out on one of the best TV shows of all time, and that's not just my opinion. I have some sources. This presentation is going to be full of spoilers, so if you can, just pause it, go watch all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad real quick, and then come back. So now, if you're ready, let's talk about Mr. Walter Hartwell White. First, just a quick recap. Walter White teaches chemistry at a high school, and he works at a car wash to help make ends meet because despite the fact that he's a brilliant scientist, teachers just aren't paid very well. Walter has a teenage son with cerebral palsy and a wife who is pregnant with their second child. The day after his 50th birthday, he collapses at the car wash and he finds out that he has lung cancer and about 2 years left to live. Walt's brother-in-law, Hank, is a DEA agent, and he invites Walt on a ride-along. Get a little excitement in your life, Hank says. While Hank is busting a meth lab, Walt sees one of his former students, Jesse, who now manufactures meth. Walt goes to Jesse and blackmails him into becoming partners. Walt plans to make enough money cooking meth to be able to provide for his family even after his death from cancer. Over the course of the series, we see a milquetoast family man transform into a brutal drug lord who goes by the alias of Heisenberg. So how would different psychological approaches explain this character's personality? The interactionist perspective says that we are different selves in different situations. Mr. White, the science teacher, seems very different from Heisenberg, who is directly responsible for multiple deaths, and yet they are different sides of the same person. Walter's behavior is a result of the interaction between his personality and the situation he is in. So in front of his family, he's one version of himself. In front of his associates in the meth business, he's a much different self. Interactionists look at person-environment transactions, which Funder described as the processes by which people respond to, seek out, and create environments that are compatible with and may magnify their personality traits. There are 3 different types of person-environment transactions. In an active person-environment transaction, someone seeks out situations that are compatible with their personalities, or they avoid situations that seem incompatible. So because Walter is a chemist, he turns to manufacturing methamphetamine. There are other ways he could have made his money, even criminal ways like robbing a bank or a museum or something. But those options are not as compatible with Walt's personality as being in a science lab is. Then later on in the show, Walt has this lab assistant named Gail who is very knowledgeable and passionate about chemistry, much like Walt is. So Walt has this assistant fired and replaced with his former student, Jesse, because Walt needs to feel like he has the upper hand. Gail is more of a peer than an underling, so Walt can't feel power over him the way he does over Jesse. Although Gail says it's an honor working with Walt, Walt feels like the situation is incompatible with his personality, so he changes the situation. In reactive person-environment transactions, people with different personalities react differently to the same situation. We see this with Walt's cancer diagnosis. Due to Walter's proud personality, he does not react as strongly as other people do. His family wants him to get treatment, but he's not interested. His former business partners, who are very rich, offer to pay for his treatment, and Walter refuses to accept their money because of how proud he is. Another example is when someone who works with Walter and Jesse kills a child who saw them at a crime scene. Jesse is devastated by the situation. He wants to send money to the child's family. Walt, on the other hand, whistles while he's working, indicating that he is not as remorseful as he says he is. Evocative person-environment transactions are those in which people change situations through their behavior. Walter White changes many situations over the course of Breaking Bad. He changed Jesse's life by blackmailing him into being partners. He changed his wife's life with his new career choice. He killed a lot of people and ordered others to be killed too. In one episode, Walt watches as someone chokes to death in her sleep instead of trying to save her. This behavior has ripple effects that harm many people, even kind of leading to an airplane crash. In another episode, Walter poisons a child in order to manipulate Jesse into going after another man that Walt accused of poisoning the boy. So, Walter's controlling personality affects the lives of everyone he interacts with, along with people he never even met, like the people who use his product. Another aspect of the interactionist perspective involves Henry Murray's theory of psychogenic needs. Walter's behavior is a result of his needs and his environment. His needs associated with inanimate objects have to do with acquiring money, order, in the sense that he wants complete control of the lab, and construction through creating the best methamphetamine on the market. As for needs reflecting power, ambition, accomplishment, and prestige, Walt definitely has those as well. He wants to establish himself as the best at what he does. He achieves this, despite his cancer holding him back. We see his need for recognition when he commands someone, "Say my name." And he attracts attention through shocking or thrilling means more than once, like when he tells Jesse that he watched his girlfriend die, or when he tries to throw a potted plant through a window in an office. For needs connected with human power, we see dominance in the way Walt controls Jesse and in the way Walt forces his way back into the house after his wife kicks him out. Walt's need for independence is expressed when he rejects his former business partner's offer to pay for his cancer treatments. Walt would rather lie, manufacture drugs, and pay his own way than accept help, which seems pretty contrarian of him. Walt also exhibits the sadomasochistic need of aggression. He forcefully overcomes opponents, even going so far as to plant a bomb in a nursing home. He is controlling and vengeful as well. As for needs concerned with affection between people, I think Walt shows less of these than other categories. He says he is concerned with taking care of his family, thus his need to manufacture drugs. In one scene, Walt does donuts with a Dodge Challenger until he inevitably wrecks the car and then sets it on fire. This behavior might have been motivated by a need for play. Lastly, there are psychogenic needs concerned with information. Exposition means providing information or educating others, and we see this from Walt, both in his job as a teacher and in the way he teaches Jesse about manufacturing meth. In one episode, Walt sees someone buying supplies to make meth, so he talks to this person about how he's buying the wrong matches. Even outside of the classroom, Walt seems to have a need to display his intelligence by telling others what he knows. Next, let's look at Walter White through a psychoanalytic lens. Psychoanalysis emphasizes the internal structure of the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is focused on the pleasure principle, and it wants everything now. The ego focuses on the reality principle, and its job is to find a compromise between all the competing wants in someone's mind. The superego focuses on the morality principle and rules. So, if Walt's superego said he needed to provide financial security for his family, and his id said he needed to get that money now, doing something that feels good, then the ego might find a compromise by saying, cook some meth. Freud believed that people had a drive toward death, destruction, and decay, and that seems to be the case for Walter White. Perhaps his diagnosis of cancer made death more salient for Walt, so he doesn't shy away from it now. Walter kills and destroys, and he creates situations that result in guns being pulled on him by multiple people. Walter's death drive seems to be overriding his life drive at times. Another part of psychoanalysis is examining defense mechanisms which protect the ego from anxiety. Walter's biggest defense mechanisms are rationalization and denial. He comes up with a rational explanation for all the crimes he commits. He's providing for his family, or he's protecting his family, or he's protecting himself. He uses rationalization when he poisons a kid, when he watches someone die, when he dismisses the murder of a child, etc. The thing about being smart is you can always come up with logical explanations for even the worst actions. But Walt also uses denial to protect his ego. When his wife surmises that Walt must be a drug dealer because how else could you make that kind of money? Walt replies, I'm a manufacturer. I'm not a dealer. He's convinced himself that he's just a scientist doing science in his science lab, not some lowly criminal drug dealer. Now here's Mike doing his own analysis of Walter White. And heads up, there are some bad words in this clip.
Son of a bitch. It was perfect, but no, you just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego. You just had to be the man. If you'd done your job, known your place, we'd all be fine right now.
Tell him, Mike.
We had a good thing.
There we go. Jung's analytical psychology considers the persona, which is like a social mask. It's how we appear or wish to appear to other people. Walter puts on a different persona for different purposes. With his teenage son, he tries to be a cool dad. He buys the kid a sports car. He makes a lot of breakfasts. This persona contrasts with the one Walt presents to his associates in the meth business. He names this other persona Heisenberg, and it's symbolized by Heisenberg's trademark black hat. Incidentally, in Westerns, black hats are often meant to symbolize the bad guy. Breaking Bad takes place in New Mexico and features some gorgeous wide shots of the high desert, so I think it counts as a Western. Of course, black is also the color of shadows, and Heisenberg could be seen as Walter's shadow self. Jung described the shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be. And it is probably safe to assume that Walter White, the scientist, never actually wished to be a murderous meth cook. Something we learn about Walter White, the scientist, is that he formed a company when he was younger, and then he sold his share. The company went on to become very successful with thanks to scientific research Walter conducted. So, Walter holds resentment toward his former partners in this business for their success. He checks how much this company is worth on a weekly basis, like he's just rubbing salt in his own wounds. This resentment might fuel Walter's urge to get rich off his own scientific discovery, that is, his signature blue meth. When Walt puts on his Heisenberg hat, he can allow himself to reveal the traits that he usually keeps in the shadows: his anger, aggression, his need for power and recognition and control. Assimilating the shadow self, rather than fighting it or letting it overtake you, leads to self-acceptance. In the series finale, Walt admits that he was never actually making meth for his family's sake. He says, "I did it for me. I liked it. I was good at it." By this time, he has dropped the Heisenberg persona and embraced his shadow. He can finally accept himself for the person he really is. Next, let's consider the humanistic perspective. Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells us that basic needs must be met before we can climb all the way up to self-actualization. In the beginning of the series, when Walt is diagnosed with cancer, he is concerned with safety and security needs. He wants to be able to provide for his family, and he does that. He makes more money than his family could ever actually need. He has a storage unit full of cash. But now his needs have changed. The money isn't enough. He wants status, esteem. When his partner Jesse asks if Walt is in the business or the money business, Walt says, "Neither. I'm in the empire business." He wants people to know his name, or at least the name Heisenberg. His career choice often puts him and his family in danger, so Walt seems to pass back and forth between the safety and status levels of Maslow's hierarchy. It's possible that Walt could truly enjoy the work he does in the lab, not just the notoriety and the stacks of cash, but the actual chemistry. Maslow described peak experiences, when people are completely absorbed in what they're doing and time seems to stand still. If Walt could have found a way to have peak experiences without having to endanger people or strain his relationships, he might have been able to keep moving up to self-actualization. And now, the behaviorist perspective, which says that learning shapes personality. Operant conditioning looks at how positive and negative reinforcements and punishments affect behavior. Walt's meth making is positively reinforced by rewards he receives. He gets extrinsic rewards, such as money and cars, but he also gets intrinsic rewards, like a sense of pride in his work and a feeling of power. Before Walt entered the drug trade, he was teaching uninterested students and sometimes having to wash their cars at his second job. He did not feel a real sense of power in his life. So, Walt stays in the drug trade, even after he's made far more money than he ever hoped for, because this choice is positively reinforced through the sense of power he feels. Walt makes increasingly more brutal decisions throughout the series in order to maintain this feeling of power. Punishments do not seem to work very well on Walt, perhaps because he thinks he is the best at everything and therefore above punishment. His wife tries to punish him by kicking him out of the house, so he just moves back in. His boss tries to punish him by committing a terrifying murder in front of him, so Walt plots to murder his boss in response. Apparently, people with antisocial personality disorder respond differently to punishment, so it's not as effective on them. Could Walt have antisocial personality disorder? He seems to meet a lot of the traits. He engages in criminal activity, he's manipulative and deceptive, he's violent, he lacks empathy. Maybe he was actually Heisenberg all along, and his cancer diagnosis was the stimulus that finally motivated Walt to reveal his true self. In the end, the transition from hapless Mr. White to menacing Heisenberg is fascinating, and the shift in personality can be understood by looking at it through a combination of psychological lenses. Much of Walter White's behavior can be explained, though not justified, by his needs and his interactions. Here are my references, not including every episode of Breaking Bad. Thank you.